with it, and I, was always courteous and cool and respectful, and never the guy that's like, nah, man, fuck that, get out of here. Because I see it, and some of my homies were like that, and I hated the feeling that when the fans would walk away, just totally fucking wind out of their sails and shit like that.
Yeah.
Now they don't like this artist ever again, know, and I saw that, and I never wanted to have anyone walk away with that experience. So I always embraced it, even when it was a pain in the ass, So.
In various research programs. So yeah, this Midnight Climax program, basically they'd kit out a safe house as a brothel, and they would have the hookers slip LSD or whatever substance to the johns, and then behind a mirror you'd have a researcher, right? I mean, this is where it got weird. Sitting there, having a drink and watching these, the hooker and the john have sex, and then they'd be analyzing the impact of the LSD on them in terms of their ability to talk, and would they...
Was the hooker in on it?
Yeah, the hooker was in on it. And
was she an employee of the CIA?
And it wasn't just the agency, like the Army was involved in these things as well. But they would get, cash payments, and oftentimes the get out of jail free card.
Ladies, if you're out there.
Yeah, if you're out there.
Listen to me.
Come on.
Whatever you need.
Come forward.
I'm here for you.
Forward. But
Come on the show. Let's talk. You can wear a Boba Fett mask. I don't care. We'll hide your identity. I don't know why I said Boba Fett.
But, just imagine. So it's... Okay, so this was clearly, was off the rails, right?
Yeah.
And they had one of the guys that was involved in this... he was with what used to be called the Federal Bureau of Narcotics. A guy named George White, was involved in like the San Francisco cat house, and according to the stories, he'd sit there and with a martini in his hand and watch the couple have sex, and then he would have like prepped the hooker to say, okay, after sex, now this appears to be the best time to get them talking, so ask them about their job and let's see if they'll talk about their job. The idea being, could we influence and entrap potential assets overseas for operational reasons? Was there some use, for operational purposes? But basically, it was just, George getting his rocks off, watching couples having sex, and very, very strange shit. But you're right in that, and so again, this went on till '64. MK Ultra, interestingly enough, not to spend too much time on it, but Richard Helms was the director at the time in the early '70s, and he and a guy named Sidney Gottlieb, who was the head of technical services at the agency, they agreed that the smart thing to do in '73, before Richard Helms left and Gottlieb left the agency, was to destroy all the records. So they purged all the records of MK Ultra that they thought existed. This was investigated in the Church Committee back in '75, and then 76, I think it was, they found a bunch of financial records, that had not been purged because they had been kept, audits of, and again, you're talking about like 149 sub-projects of MK Ultra. So you can imagine each sub-project has its own accounting, and you got to turn in your receipts for the LSD that you bought or the hooker you paid off or whatever. So here's my receipt. Can I have my $12 or whatever you paid for a hooker back then? And so probably not $12, but they found some financial records, and so that became then a matter of another investigation up on the Hill. And Stansfield Turner, the time the CIA director, testified at that point. And that's why I brought my laptop, is because Stansfield Turner's testimony is actually pretty interesting as far as MK Ultra goes. And he talks about, we've attempted to group the activities covered by the 149 sub-projects into categories under descriptive headings, wouldn't you? In broad outline, at least, this presents the contents of these files. The headings of the categories of all these various projects that ran under MK Ultra, and this gives you a pretty good quick sense of what they were doing at the time. Research into the effects of behavioral drugs and/or alcohol. There were 17 sub-projects probably not involving human testing. This is a testimony from the director of the CIA, Stansfield Turner. 14 sub-projects definitely involving tests on human volunteers. 19 sub-projects probably including tests on human volunteers. While not known, some of these sub-projects may have included tests on unwitting subjects as well.
While not known?
Well, not known. And then 6 sub-projects definitely involving tests on unwitting subjects. Research on hypnosis, acquisition of chemicals or drugs, aspects of magician's art. No. What?
Magician's art?
Yeah, like slipping them a Mickey or something. You know, how do you do that? Sleight of hand. Studies of human behavior, sleep research, behavioral changes during psychotherapy, motivational studies, studies of defectors, assessment and training techniques, polygraph research, funding mechanisms for MK Ultra external research activities, research on drugs, toxins, and biologicals in human tissue, activities whose objectives cannot be determined from available documentation. Anyway, it goes on, but it gives you a sense of what the hell was happening during this period of time. But again, this doesn't justify it. Obviously, it doesn't. But you're absolutely right that to have a full understanding of this, you have to look at the context of what, where we were at that time. And where we were was smack dab in the height and elevation of the Cold War. Knowing that our adversaries, our existential threats, were engaged in this sort of behavior. Now, George Wyatt was not really a researcher or anything. He was just sitting behind a mirror watching some people, get off. So clearly, and all the unwitting subjects involved. I mean, but look, they were slipping LSD to agency employees, right, without telling them.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. And I mean, it's just. Yeah, so
it's not that long ago, but
not.
We have to think about it in terms of the same way we thought about Abraham Lincoln. That in the context of the times, this wasn't such a horrendous thing to do. They didn't know any better. It was really, they didn't know what these substances would do to people, and there wasn't a lot of ways to find out. The Harvard LSD studies that they did, that they believe in part were responsible for the Unabomber. There's a lot of other shit that was responsible for the Unabomber, including particularly his childhood. But they did a lot of these studies because they didn't know. I mean, it's one way to find out. I mean, how do you get responsible human subjects? How do you get people to do? Well, there's not a lot of ways other than just test people.
Right. And unfortunately, what this ended up being was, like using the most marginalized people out there, like sex workers or prisoners or whatever.
Right.
And oftentimes, Johns or but that whole thing. But where Tom O'Neill's book is really interesting in a couple of ways isn't if you jump. So MK Ultra kind of finished up in '64 officially, right? That's when the Inspector General came out from the agency and said, "This you got to know, you can't do this." They had a new Inspector General and they looked and said, "This is clearly not where we are supposed to be." But interestingly, funding mechanisms, that were used to dole out grants or to provide a cutout between government and research that was being done, did some of those continue to exist for other programs, other research? And in '67, you have the Summer of Love, San Francisco, and Tom O'Neill writes about this, and it's very, very interesting. But you had the Haight-Ashbury Free Medical Clinic, right, which in part was running a couple of projects that were supposedly getting funding from the National Institute for Mental Health, which had previously been a funding mechanism also for MK Ultra, a few years in the past. And Roger Smith was a guy who was getting his PhD in criminology. He was working at the Haight-Ashbury Free Medical Clinic, and he was also Manson's parole officer. And to your point, Manson was like a brook trout or a rainbow trout that is in some catch and release stream, right? He was constantly arrested during the '67, '68 period. And remember, the killings happened in August of '69, and he kept getting released. And he had been in prison, right? In '67, early in that year, he'd been released from prison, right? So he was on probation. Any violation, certainly some of the things he was getting arrested for, should have sent him back to prison, but he wasn't. So that, to me, is one of the most interesting parts of the book, is this revolving door that Manson was in. And eventually we all know what happened to him. But yeah, working at the Haight-Ashbury Free Medical Clinic, that's where Manson would go, along with some of his followers, and they were, part of a study, and they were, I'm sure, getting their LSD from there. But also, this guy Jolly West, who was involved in MK Ultra, also ended up having an office at the Haight-Ashbury Free Medical Clinic. So, but again, to Tom O'Neill's
that
point,
clinic closed down about 4 months after Tom's book came out? Been open for over 50 years.
it's crazy. Yeah.
What are the odds?
Yeah, I know. What are the odds? I didn't see that coming. Yeah, but I mean, again, it's. I like the book because he does seem to be trying to let the facts of all his research lead the way,
Right.
rather than trying
What
to prove
are
a point that
those
he comes up with at the
clues,
beginning
dude?
of his book.
Well, he also exposed the prosecutor, Bugliosi, and all the issues that was going on with him that led to him wanting to
It's such a
follow
weird
the narrative
item,
that they had laid out, that Manson was trying to incite a race war and,
Right.
and ignore all the other indicators that there was some deeper connections.
And yeah, was Manson was he an informer for the bureau or for local law enforcement or some other outfit? That's
Hard to tell.
hard to tell, but it's compelling in light of the fact that he kept getting released. He seemed to have a get out of jail free card.
He also seemed to have an unlimited supply of acid. That was what's fascinating. And he also seemed to employ the same techniques that apparently the CIA had employed when they had done experiments on prisoners, including the fact that he would, force them into weird sexual situations and pretend to take LSD himself but not really participate, and then, influence them. And he seemed to be doing things to them in terms of like trying to alter their behavior and getting them to do things that were outside the norm, including murder.
Yeah, I mean, did he have a sense from his time there at the clinic or dealing with, Roger Smith, his parole officer, who again was also a criminology doctoral candidate, I guess, and so was but look, Manson was, he was not a rocket scientist. He was illiterate for the most part, right, until he ended up in prison and maybe
Which
knows,
is why it was so weird that he was able to manipulate so many people so well.
Right.
But it was also, it's like, he was the perfect guinea pig. I mean, you're talking about a guy who spent half his life in federal penitentiaries.
Yeah, and also you're putting it in context of the time. What else did you have going on? You had sort of this awareness of the impact of LSD on the counterculture, right? So you had federal agencies like the Bureau, and for example, worrying about, oh my God, what's what are these hippies going to do next?
Right.
Are they going? And they were worried, obviously, about the Black Panthers, but it was also more than that. It was the again this
Anti-war movement.
yeah, just the general counterculture and the impact of drugs on it, and so it's a fascinating. I think it's a very interesting read, and I think it's worth the read because again, he's spent so much time trying to make his way through and get this
20 years.
book. Yeah,
It's a crazy story, and if you haven't heard the podcast, please listen to it with Tom O'Neill. What number was that, Jamie? Have any idea? But it's just. Do you think that those times and the shift between the 50s and the 60s are maybe even a bigger cultural shift than we're experiencing now? Because it seems like
yeah.
when the hippies came around and all the drugs and free love and all that crazy shit and Woodstock, it almost seemed like that is even more of a radical change in culture than we're experiencing today. We're experiencing a lot of turmoil today, but so much of it you could attribute to the problems, the economic despair with COVID and the lockdown, and then the George Floyd murder and the Black Lives Matter protests, and there's so many different tangible factors that you could point to.
Well, I think in the pandemic is certainly a massive part of it because
Big
if
part.
you think about it, and this this in no way minimizes the importance of the protests and trying to get policing the way that everyone agrees it should be, but if everybody was working and we didn't have the pandemic, right, I would argue we wouldn't have seen the protests in Portland. We wouldn't have seen there.
Right.
There is this
like we talked
Yeah,
about earlier.
right.
Yeah, these people they have too much free
too
time.
much free time. But I don't know. I mean, I remember. I'm old enough to remember, somewhat as a kid, the race riots of the '60s. It's just general upheaval, right? And I remember my older sister, down in the basement painting protest signs with a bunch of her friends, and they were gonna head downtown to a protest, And I had two brothers that were in the Vietnam War, and there was a lot of, they were definitely at odds with each other, right? Here's my sister protesting the war. There's one of my brothers flying F-4s in the war, another a medic, and so it was a very tumultuous time. I don't think that's where we are now. So I agree with you. I think it was more upheaval then, but it's incredibly disappointing now. I thought we were, maybe it's obviously naive to some degree, but I kind of thought we were further along than we are now. It seems.
Yeah.
And so it's very disappointing and frustrating to see where we're kind of at this moment in time. And again, part of it's heightened by just the uber partisanship of everything. But I don't think we're there. And I think the pandemic has given us all too much time to reflect on shit. And
also, everyone's so scared that we're projecting it onto other subjects, and that this fear and anxiety, it just accentuates or exacerbates all the other problems that we have. First of all, there's the financial fear, which doesn't seem like there's a way out of it. For a lot of people, for low-income people and people that are losing their jobs and people that are losing their businesses, there doesn't seem to be a light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, no, we're very fortunate in that we've been able to ride out that side of it, right, with the economy and all that. But yeah, all the people. I mean, look at the situation currently with just the unemployment, but and how quickly that took place, right? We were riding high as far as the economy goes, just a handful of months ago. And now the number of people who are worried about, do they have a roof over their head, because maybe they're going to get evicted, or, what the fuck? Now I can go back to work, but I can't because my workplace isn't open anymore.
Well, you used to hear that everyone is one paycheck away.
Right.
That was the thing. Most Americans, like 40% of Americans, are one paycheck away from being broke. Well, what the fuck are you doing now?
Yeah.
We're 5 months later? What does that mean?
Well, that's $600 a week. Right. I mean, and I know, I get it. Right. The government can't continue to keep kicking cash out the door. Right. But
it's not enough.
It's not enough. But it's also, I mean, look, what the fuck's wrong with our politicians? Right. I mean, they're agonizing over this. Right. We've got, how many trillions are we in debt? And so, fine, but solve the problem now. Right. The pandemic, it's not going to last forever. Right. We're going to figure this out, and everyone's going to get back to hopefully some relative normalcy. But in the short term, the fact that the Democrats and Republicans can't, come together and resolve this, they're bickering about, well, what do we do with the next bailout bill, or do we have one, or how much is it going to be a month? And you got people legitimately standing at the door wondering whether they have to leave their apartment or not, or whether they'll have a place to come home to, or how are they going to feed their kids. And you got these fucking idiot politicians who are just playing games with us, and it always happens. And
they're paid.
They're paid, and if there's no consequence to them, then shit doesn't happen. I firmly believe that with Washington D.C. Nothing happens in Washington unless the politicians personally feel as if there's some consequence to their situation, their position of power, and they're acting as if that there won't be any consequence. And so they're talking about, we're going to be able to get this done before our August break. What the fuck? They're going to take an August break? I mean, I was stunned by that today when I was talking to somebody in D.C. and they're saying, they're trying to rush this through before the. Who takes a fucking break in a pandemic?
Of a national crisis.
Yeah. So, but that's what we got to go back and see our constituents. I mean, your constituents would probably tell you to stay in D.C. and get something done. But I don't know. I just at the end of the day, it doesn't do any good to sit around and pitch and moan. But I think, unless we have term limits and we have campaign finance reform, we're going to be talking about this forever.
Or mushrooms. You need to give it,
Wait,
or the
slip some
aliens
LSD
land.
to a bunch of unwitting politicians and see what happens.
What do you think of all this Pentagon UFO? We've recovered crafts, not of this world talk.
Okay, yeah, I think two things. I think again can always be true at the same time. I don't think we're the only intelligent life out there. I mean, I'm classifying us as intelligent, but I also don't think we're hiding some alien spacecraft somewhere.
So why do you think the Pentagon would come out and say something like that?
Well, I think, look, we did here comes a pitch for my show, for Black Files
what show is
Declassified.
this?
That's Black Files Declassified.
Black Files Declassified, and how could one watch this
My
show?
God, that was a good first season, wasn't it? It was on Discovery on Science Channel.
Ah, I
Yes.
love Discovery. I love the Science Channel.
We did an episode on Advanced Aeronautic Threat Identification Program, ATIP, which was the Pentagon's admitted, came out and said, yes, we have a program, that we ran a program. It's no longer in existence, called ATIP, which was designed to identify unidentified aviation threats, basically. So it's not talking about UFOs necessarily. It could be a hostile, prototype aircraft that, what is that?
I talked to Commander Fravor.
Yeah,
He's
you
the
go,
one-
David Fravor.
Yeah, David was in here,
Yeah.
and he explained his incident off of the coast of San Diego.
Mm-hmm.
And he said they tracked this thing. It dropped from 60,000 feet to 1 foot above the sea in a second.
Yeah. And
Single
it
second.
wasn't just him seeing this,
No,
right? There was
no.
the radar operators on
Exactly.
board and his wingmen.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, but I think,
They said it was tracking them, and then it actually actively blocked their tracking.
and then no visible means of propulsion.
Exactly. No
right.
no heat signal.
Yeah. I mean, so I think it's, look, and he's a very credible
He's as credible
witness.
as it gets.
Yeah. Right. And so, I mean,
He's not the only one.
yeah, not everything. I mean, but
What do you think of that?
yeah. Well, I think, yeah, I think we don't. Well, here's what I think. I think we haven't resolved that issue. We don't know. There was no final report that gave some sort of conclusive evidence that said this is what this this object was. It is considered still to this day to be an anomaly, perhaps of they just no clarification, which is interesting in all by itself. And again, kind of goes back to this. Look, are we the only intelligent people? No. But do I think that the government is capable, all these years, of holding a secret like that? No, I really don't. I think there's much like with MK Ultra or anything else, like eventually shit hits the fan, stuff comes out, and I don't think I'm not one of those, and I say this, and I'm sure a lot of people disagree, but I just don't think that the government's capable of keeping secrets for the long term. Certainly not of this magnitude. But I think there are certainly things that have happened that we can't explain. And,
What do you
and
think
one of them
that
would be
is?
the sighting by Fravor.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but materials, materials that aren't, from Earth. Look, shit hits the Earth from space all the time, and that qualifies as a material that is
Right,
not
but
found.
That's not
Yeah,
what they
yeah.
said, though.
Right. Well,
They said they've recovered crafts not from this world.
yeah, I would want to sit down with the
Me
individuals
too.
saying that and say, okay, clarify this, please.
I'd want to take them to one of them brothels.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. I sit there with
Dose 'em
martini
up.
behind that mirror. It's like, okay.
Hey, man,
Yeah.
tell me what you really saw.
There you go. Bring one of those hookers in from the
want-
60s. But
I
no,
want-
no,
No, don't do that to her or him.
no.
I
But
would want to know, though, what is actually happening, and why would they come out with a statement like that?
well, I'm going to tell you something. This between you and me is second season of Black Files Declassified. We're going to be looking at that.
Why do you think?
I don't know what that's the wait.
Or the
Absolutely. I sit there with a
Dose 'em
martini
up.
behind that mirror. It was like, okay.
Hey man,
Yeah.
tell me what you really saw.
There you go. Bring one of those hookers in from the
want-
60s. But no.
No, don't do that to her or him.
No.
I
But
would want to know though what what is actually happening, and why would they come out with a statement like that?
well, I'm going to tell you something. This between you and me is second season of Black Files Declassified. We're going to be looking at that.
Why do you think?
I don't know what that's the big question is why would they say that?
Right.
And I don't have an answer for that. I don't know, and that's why I say it
It's a shocker.
it definitely bears further investigation. That goes without saying.
If there was a
But-
thing that was coming, they would want to prepare people. And I think if you wanted to prepare people, the best way to prepare people is to slowly give them signs that some shit is about to go down. And one of the best ways is to say, we have found things that are not of this world. Okay, think about that for a little while. We'll see you in a few months. A few months of accepting that without any. See, there's no event, right? It's
Yeah.
just a statement.
What was the exact wording?
Let's
Can
find
we
out.
bring that up? Yeah, the exact
we pull it
wording
up?
of
Here it is.
yeah.
Crashes. Harry Reid said he believed crashes of vehicles from other worlds had occurred, and that retrieved materials had been studied secretly for decades.
Yeah.
Now, you know Bob Lazar. Do you know the story of Bob Lazar? Bob
Yeah.
Lazar was in
Yeah.
here, and he said some things that were ridiculed, but turned out to be absolutely true. One of the things that he said was that there was this element 115, and that they had figured out a way to stabilize this element in these other planets, and that's what they used to propel these vehicles with a different kind of propulsion that manipulated gravity, and it essentially had created some sort of a warp where they weren't subject to the same laws of physics
Right.
with this propulsion system that we are with what we have, which is just igniting fuel and pushing the explosion pushes the rocket
Right,
into
right.
into space.
Which could explain sort of the Fravor sighting.
Yeah, I mean, and the way he
yeah.
described these vehicles in the 1980s and the early 1990s is exactly the way Fravor's vehicle worked. Exactly the way the gimbal video worked. These things, for whatever reason, they fly one way and then they turn sideways. Like if you had a plate, the plate turns up and down, and then that's the way it travels. And then somehow or another, that's how it travels insanely fast. That it does something to manipulate gravity around it.
Yeah.
It sounds super weird, but the
It does.
fact that this guy talked about this in the early 90s, and then this is the exact video that the Pentagon refers to, that you actually see these objects that they can't explain, that don't give off a heat signal, that move in this exact same way at spectacular rates of speed. And then that's how the TikTok craft worked too.
Right. Well, I mean, there's a leap there necessarily
Right.
that you got to make.
I don't want to make that leap either. I
yeah.
know what you're saying. Like
Yeah.
for years, I was like, it's all horseshit.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not. Again, not saying it couldn't happen. I'm just saying there's certain parts of this, like okay, Harry Reid talking about it. Well, look, Harry Reid was he was very interested in this stuff. He allocated some federal funds to one of his buddies in Nevada to create a sort of a center for examining this and for developing space exploration capabilities. So Harry Reid is certainly interested in this. I talked to Lou Elizondo, who ran ATIP, right? And you don't really get that answer when you say, okay, Lou, was ATIP holding on to materials, that came from a alien craft? No.
Right,
what they're
but
saying
maybe
is
it was an ATIP that was involved in that.
maybe it was an
aspect of
ATIP.
the-
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's that. Okay. Yeah, I get that. And again, I guess what I'm saying is I'm open to say, yeah, fine. Like anything's possible. I suppose in this world, things that I do know is I have a really hard time believing the government could keep this all buttoned up over a period of time.
But isn't there
And
a genuine ridicule factor for
Oh,
coming
sure.
forward that
Sure.
would help I mean, that's a part of the whole things about all the UFO stories. They're so ridiculous.
Well, that's why, that's why they set up ATIP to begin with, right? Was so, that they could have sort of a legitimate outlet and a place for this to go. But yeah, Fravor himself talks about it. Look, it's not in their best interest to get back on the carrier and say, by the way, we spotted an unidentified flying object.
Yeah.
But they did, and and you're right. So that's the natural tendency is to kind of look the other way or roll your eyes, and that can act as a deterrent. Yeah, I don't know. But I do think that it bears further investigation. There's no doubt about that. And I think that the ATIP program that the Pentagon was running, for the minimal cost of that compared to the cost of another air asset or, a platform of some sort, I think they should have kept it going, right? And they should have normalized to some degree, because it's in our national security interest to know, have the Russians or have others developed materials, right? Or propulsions. Everybody's working on new propulsion systems, right? Everybody that has the ability and the resources. So hypersonic craft, that's just coming. Right? That's going to happen, and whoever wins that particular race is going to be further up the food chain than everybody else. So it's in our national interest to be exploring any legitimate or potentially legitimate sighting. Understand what that is. That doesn't mean you're chasing UFOs or sort of spacecraft from it just means you should know what the hell that is or what's out there. So I'm a big proponent of that. I'm just saying also you have to proceed with caution.
For sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like the new normal that we're experiencing right now in the pandemic, it really illuminated to me how easily human beings adapt to things. We adapt to everything. We really do. We just accept it. Well, this is the new thing. We exist. Like phones. We accept the fact that we just always have a phone on us now. I mean, when you and I were growing up, there's no fucking phones, right?
Did you have you had phones on the wall, right? I mean, that with a cord,
sure,
right? And if you were lucky, you had a long cord, so you could take the phone away from your parents when you talk to your friends. Oh yeah.
We used to have the dial.
We had the dial, and then when we got the push button phones, I thought we were the living shit, right?
Yeah.
We got the push button.
You were a rock star with a push button.
Man, and then you'd get, you take that phone. If you got a call from your girlfriend or whatever, and you were younger, you'd go and try to get as far away from your parents as you could, and
whisper.
I can't
Do you remember
I can't talk
when they
right
came
now.
up with star 69?
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Somebody called you and they hung up. You press star 69 and would call them right back. You're like, hey, motherfucker, I got new technology.
Yeah.
You can't just be calling me.
What do you want?
Well, I remember
but
when
you're
I first used that. People were like, how'd you get my number? I star 69, you bitch.
Now everybody's got one of these, including Muggsy, my youngest. Which, oh, by the way, I told him I would mention this. The oldest boy, Scooter, who's just turned 13, he walked by yesterday before I got on a plane, and he said, "Where you going?" I said, "I'm going to Los Angeles." He says, "Why are you going to Los Angeles?" And I said, "Well, I got a couple of meetings, and I'm going to sit down with Rogan." And he's watched some of your podcasts, and
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I said, no, only the good ones. No, with the appropriate ones, the age-appropriate ones.
I don't know which ones those are.
There are none.
Good luck.
There are none. And but he says, great. Now, as we're having this conversation about you, Muggsy walked by, and he's 8 years old. And he walks by and he stops and he listens for a second. And he goes, "Rogan?" And I said, "Yeah." And he says, "You gonna see Rogan?" And I said, "Yeah." And he looks for a second. And he goes, "Don't know who he is." Turns around, walks away. And I thought, yeah, that's it. That's what I'm going to tell Joe.
That's perfect.
But even Muggsy's got he's got a phone, right? And
how old is he?
He's 8. Actually just turned 9.
You gave an 8-year-old a phone. Well, in case they get about to get mauled by a bear.
Well, yeah,
good.
That's important, or lifted off the ground by a hawk
or a UFO.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's the other thing is like again the idea that we've had visitors from another planet, but they just decided they got bored with us or something, I don't know, and decided, nah, fuck it, it's not worth it. Who knows?
I don't think they're doing that. I think they're waiting for us to fuck up hugely. That's what I think.
The hell's 2020? How much more time do they need?
I think they're closing in. They're like, these assholes are really close to entering war with China or Syria or Iran.
Yeah. Well, the China thing, yeah, who knows? We haven't even talked to. I know everybody.
Yeah.
Whenever they hear I'm going to be doing this, I'm sure they probably think I'm going to come on and bash China.
Well,
but
the China thing is an interesting one, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it is a very interesting one right now because China's been buying up a lot of assets when they realized that the pandemic was kicking in, and there's a lot of companies that are China owns a large stake in them now.
Yeah. No, it's look. They
TikTok's about to get banned.
ooh, TikTok. That's going to piss off my middle boy, Sluggo.
Well,
He-
Facebook,
yeah.
coincidentally, Facebook or Instagram, I should say, is about to release Reels, which is their version of TikTok. Remember how they fucking cock blocked
Oh yeah.
Snapchat with
Yep.
Instagram stories?
Yep.
Well, they're about to cock block TikTok with Instagram Reels, and then they're gonna lure all the kids over to Reels.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. By the time we get, I'm sure it happens with your kids too. By the time you get hip to whatever trend they got, I just said hip to whatever trend the kids have. They're two
Yeah.
trends down the road.
Yeah,
right?
TikTok is old school, Dad.
Right. They don't give a shit anymore
Yeah,
about
they're
that.
doing some new stuff. But
Yeah.
the thing about the TikTok thing that's interesting this is the tinfoil hat part. Put that on again. There's always been this talk that Facebook helped Trump win the election.
Yeah.
And they have been the most reluctant, I should say, to censor Trump stuff. And there's a lot of people that think that Mark Zuckerberg is in some way, or Facebook is in some way responsible for getting Trump elected because they benefit from all the interaction. They benefit from, and it's one of the last places where conservatives can freely discuss things and not, except the hydroxychloroquine thing, they've taken that down. But Facebook owns Instagram, and Instagram has Reels. And if Trump comes in, Reels has not been released yet, correct? I think it's early August, which is like any minute now,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
So what are we? The 3rd? What is today?
the
the
third.
third.
Yeah, it's the third.
So
yeah.
if they come along and they ban TikTok and introduce Reels at the same time,
Right.
I'm gonna be a little suspicious.
Yeah. No, I agree with you on that, but I think what's going to happen is I think they're going to orchestrate a deal. Microsoft will take over at least the U.S. U.S., Canada, Australia, New Zealand. They'll take over those operations of TikTok. I don't know why that would be particularly appealing to Microsoft unless they take the whole global community of TikTok users, right? Which is whatever 800 million. There's got maybe 80 to 90 million or so in the U.S. But I think they want to get a deal done by September sometime. So
Well, Microsoft has missed the ball when it comes to mobile. I mean, they fucked up.
I don't know what he got going on with this mask. Fucking. He is crazy. The whole outfit is crazy. Now they go a regular mask. I don't know what he got going on with this mask. Fucking.
brofist to you all. The out of focus one is always the best. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Court of Opinion, where judgment reigns supreme. That's exactly what it is. It's where our opinions and our thoughts matter, and people take great solace that if they have struggles, they have problems, they can come and spend their time here and get the answers that they deserve, thanks to our wonderful, wonderful audience. And answers we will deliver today, ladies and gentlemen. We have a case. Another case has entered the court, and the court must rule on its opinion. We don't even have I just want to put it out there to those of you who send these things into us. We don't even have an innocent emote. It doesn't exist. We only have guilty. We literally only have guilty. There is no innocent emote. There's only guilty. That is all we have. I hope you've had a tremendous week. Another round of raid testing, which has completely 180'd, or rescued, I should say. Our first raid in the Shadowlands Castle Nathria was looking really grim and super boring up until the two bosses we got to test last night, which were really, really fun. They were very, very fun, including the final boss of our first raid here, Sire Denathrius, which looks like it's going to be very interesting. Yeah, it looks like they've managed to do like 2 really good bosses and 8... 8 other bosses, extra bosses, to go along with it. But, you know, has it saved the raid? I don't know yet. We'll see. It's not a great ratio. It's not the most outstanding raid I've ever seen them come out with for a new expansion, but it has some promise. Mythic raid testing starts this evening. In fact, in like a couple of hours-ish, a little bit more than a couple of hours, we will have Mythic raid testing beginning. Hopefully, with actual characters, Blizzard would be really nice. You know, ones that can choose covenants. That would be cool. Legendaries, maybe. You know, the things we'll be using when we fight these bosses. That would be really ace. That would be really, really ace. Because right now, I'm testing on a character that's essentially a BFA character. Feels inappropriate. But, you know, you do you, and we'll just have a go. You do you, and we'll have a go. I did have to raid test without even a covenant spell. It was as if the Shadowlands didn't exist for me. I just played my BFA character, minus Azerite and Essences and all that kind of, basically a bog standard character. A classic WoW character. Let's get into today's little thing. It is roasting here today, mainly because of this office and the sheer amount of humidity that is rocking on us. Let's do the case first. Let's get some judgment going. The case of the Jealous Rogue. I know, it's hard to believe there would ever be a jealous rogue. It is very hard to believe. Okay. So I will pre-warn out, as our author has, there is some reference to COVID here. So if that's something that's going to upset you, it's not done in a horrible way or anything like that. But there is some reference to it, so just bear that in mind. It should be about 15 to 20 minutes long, and the other stories do not have anything like that in them. Let's go with... I'm going to go with, like that. Nick Adams, which he's gone with. And we need... Kish. Let's go with Kish. All right, beautiful. Beautiful. We have our people. All right, are you ready? Are you feeling unbiased?
My nuts are roasting.
That's all I ask. Do you feel unbiased? Okay. You feel unbiased. Good. Justice preach. I like that. Justice preach. I could see that on a t-shirt and definitely won't get people in trouble. Justice preach, and the ladies and gentlemen of the jury. That's you. That's you. I come before you today with a familiar inquiry. I ask the court, am I the arsehole? I genuinely don't know. I will take the decision of the Drama Time Court as the final verdict, okay? He's prepared to accept our verdict on this. We are going, ladies and gentlemen, to one of the spookiest of places that exists in our World of Warcraft community. A place where anybody can do anything, where anybody can be a hero. It's called Classic World of Warcraft. Raids filled as far as the eye can see with warriors and rogues, shamans, hunters, 2 of, warlocks, 2 of, some mages, and that's it. Nothing else. Because everything else is a useless bag of wank. Okay. That's where we're going. We're going to classic World of Warcraft. That's where we're going. Oh my god, I'm turning invisible by the second. Emergency lights, go! Am I warping back in? What's happened? This is a new one. Hold on, I've got a solution. Wait for it. Did it fix? Looks okay. All right, lights. Yeah, it's so bright. It's really sunny here today. It's really nice. Saved. Yeah, I'm all over it, man. I'm all over it. If my face melts again, though, you guys need to be on the case because it's over there for me and I can't see it. So, here we go. When classic World of Warcraft arrived, I went hard. I went hard. I took 2 weeks off work. Oh, yeah. No jokes. I gave the cat to my sister. You can't even look after a cat? Really? Cats require like zero intervention. Can't even look after a cat. By the end of those weeks, my rogue was level 60. And I was riding high with the top guild on my server. Big. People play WoW for lots of different reasons. Some like to overcome the challenge. No one plays classic World of Warcraft to overcome a challenge. They don't. It's really easy. Look, we knew it before it came back, right? We knew that. We did. Okay. A little bit of challenge. A little bit. A little bit. But when Cthulhu dies in less than an hour, it's not a big challenge, let's be honest. Some like to smash faces in PvP. They do. They do like that. You can do that a lot in Classic. But me, I'm a simple man. I like purple items. Shiny, shiny purple items. I like researching shiny purple items. Farming shiny purple items. And most of all, of course, equipping shiny purple items. To show it off. So people know I am legit. I like just gazing at my character on the character select screen. Wearing rare and impressive shinies. I'm not going to lie, it makes me feel important. And that's why nothing on this earth would come between me and my pre-raid best in slot. With only a few minor applications of ninjutsu, I got Black Crow, both Dalren swords, the Cape of the Black Baron. I spent 4 days doing back-to-back BRD runs to get my Hand of Justice. Fuck all y'all. How many kills did it take us for Hand of Justice on my warrior? Took more than 4 fucking days, I'll tell you that. 3 of them I traded away. 3 of them to our guild DPS. Suckers. Suckers. I'm the sucker, I suppose. But I went too hard. As we've all done. I burnt that candle too hot. 6 weeks after launch, I was a living human wreck. I was always tired at work. My manager was starting to get pissed at me. I had grown, yet spouted a secondary chin. My wife was furious, and my sister did not want this cat anymore. 6 weeks you left your cat with your sister? You son of a bitch. 6 weeks. 6 weeks you left that cat there. I need you to look after this cat for 2 weeks, all right? 2 weeks max, that's it. That's it. Then the day came. My world came crashing down around me. The walls broke open and the water flooded in. I forgot to pick my wife up from work. She's a teacher. And just like a child, she stood there by the side of the curb outside school. Why, you may ask, did I forget to pick up my wife from work? When she asked me, I had to tell her. I was farming herbs. It had gotten so bad, ladies and gentlemen, that I tried to smooth things over with her by showing her how many potions I had made. She put the foot down. She put the foot down hard. And I can't play World of Warcraft casual. I can't do it. I just, it's not for me. I unsubbed. I gave it all up. But what a run I had. It was a brilliant run, and I regret nothing. I don't. All of that is merely background to the case at hand. You see, my office closed down in April, as I'm sure many others did. Working at home turned out actually only occupied about 2 days a week. This is the most common thing I've heard from people who have worked from home during COVID, is that they found out they don't have any work to do. Like, at all. They just don't have any work to do. Oh, if I really actually try and work, I have like nothing to do at all. I have like 2 days worth of stuff, that's it. So here I am on my work hours at home, stuck in my house with a computer. So I started to play a couple of games, you know, just 1 or 2. That's all, just to see what was in that Steam library. You know, seeing what I've been sat there since the last sale, and I haven't had time to look at it. I got these bedrooms set up as an office, so my wife could continue to teach from the kitchen, as most teachers had to do. But I could hear it. That drum beat. I could hear that banging from Kalimdor in my chest. I mean, it was right there. Just on the desktop. I can't resub though. I'll just check the guild Discord. See if they're still up to stuff. And lo and behold, they are. In fact, the guild is recruiting. They're recruiting to prepare for AQ40. And the day came. I hit the button. And I quietly resubscribed to World of Warcraft. My guildies, of course, welcomed me with open arms. Their fallen hero. They knew what I was all about. Welcome back. Welcome back to the family. I was one of 6 recruits, including, to my irritation, 2 other rogues named Weasel and Nick Adams. My magnificent, hard-fought, hard-earned pre-raid best in slot items and the couple of Night Slayer pieces that I had farmed at such high cost only 8 months earlier were utter fucking garbage. I looked around me and all those established raiders in my guild, full tier 2. They needed only the rarest of the rare Blackwing Lair and Zul'Gurub items to round them out to being utterly bis. When my former rogue sidekick, and now rogue officer, Kish, greeted me in his full Bloodfang and Thunder Fury, no joke, I felt physically sick. That should have been mine. That should have been mine. He was my underling, and now look at him. There's an upside, though. There's an upside that I have to consider. These dudes don't need any gear. More loot for me. A Molten Core and a Blackwing Lair raid was scheduled for Thursday evening, specifically to gear up us new recruits. I couldn't have been more excited. In one night, I would go from scrub, floor sweeper, to golden god once more. And while my wife taught in the other room, I kept occasionally logging on to World of Warcraft to grab those world buffs. I had my watch set for when it was supposed to happen. I needed to be ready. Ready to earn all those juicy upgrades I was going to get. The raid began, of course, in Molten Core. I was one of the first to arrive, eager. And I stood inspecting every single person that was invited to our raid. Weasel and Nick Adams were wearing real fucking junk gear. Especially Weasel. Leveling greens. And what made me look at him like he was actual dog shit, and I'm not joking, actual dog shit, is he was wearing a Wild Heart cowl. I sneered at him. Loser. The raid itself was so much easier than I remembered. My guild cuts through Molten Core like a fucking knife. They were pulling 3 core hounds at once with no effort. I barely had time to get slice and dice going before they had killed everything. It was during this trash clear that Kish keyed up. So as you guys know, Weasel gets all the gear tonight. Yeah, sure, says Nick Adams. Yep, says another rogue. Thanks, guys, says Weasel. No. Why? Why? How do I respond? I just said why? Question mark in the raid chat. To which Nick Adams just typed the 3 dots of shame. As if it was well known, as if I should have been pre-prepared like everybody else knew. And here I was like an idiot. The 3 dots of shame? A whisper came in from my old protege, Kish. Dude, don't you know? No. Weasel has COVID. Shit, I replied. I'd made myself look like an idiot. It took me by surprise. Yet the loot whore in me still thought, what does that have to do with rogue loot? Jesus Christ. It's terrible. But what does that have to do with rogue loot?
What the fuck, dude?
He's not. Is he wrong though? I don't know. Is he wrong though? It didn't matter what I thought though. I knew. I could read the room. I'm not socially inept. I could tell. This had been decided.
Reason, man.
It's gonna happen.
Oh
okay.
my god.
So I just typed up, hey, sorry Weasel, no problem. And that was that. The rest of the night passed in a blitz. As boss after boss dropped awesome rogue gear, all of which went to Weasel. I even joined in the chorus of congratulations with every single drop. On that night, Weasel, drenched in greens and wearing a Wild Heart cape, finished up with 3 out of 8 Night Slayer, 3 out of 8 Bloodfang, a Striker's Mark, a Maladeth,
Maladeth, dude?
but no helm. So he had all of those things and still wore that fucking Wild Heart cowl. After the raid, Kish whispered me a thank you for being so understanding. I said what I think was a fair comment. That's a one-off though, right? Of course. Of course. Of course it is. It was not. It was absolutely fucking not. Shockingly, the following weekend, 3 raiders, including Nick Adams, suddenly got COVID.
Oh, I can't even. What the fuck? What? Like what? What? Huh?
I need to get closer. That spell isn't ready yet.
Steelers have reported to the North Shore, and they were greeted with a sight for sore eyes as Big Ben threw with the team for the first time in almost a year. We have the latest as the players start to ramp up workouts and get ready for a new season. You're watching Steelers Training Camp 2020.
It's Steelers Training Camp 2020, presented by FedEx.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the second of 4 Steeler Training Camp shows here on KDKA TV. I'm Bob Pompiani as we get you set for the 2020 season. Tonight, Rich Walsh and Jerry Dulac will break down Ben Roethlisberger. Merrill Hodge will look at this year's top draft pick, Chase Claypool. Missy Matthews will take you inside of Heinz Field to get a look at this camp and what it looks like from the inside. But first, we welcome back my booth broadcast partner, Mr. Charlie Batch, who joins us from his home. What's up, C-Batch? Good to see you.
You too, man. It's great to be back, and I'm ready to talk some football.
And that's what we're going to do. Plenty of that coming up here in the next 30 minutes. You know, as we talked about in our first show last week, Heinz Field is the home for training camp.
Ooh, shit, dude. Shit, dude.
I'm out of range.
But I want you to understand something, and I'm going to say this very clearly. I was not there. Only thing I was hearsay, not hearsay, but to say, like, okay, my religion of Cthulhu Aswapel, that's the underworld. He was like on the Mummy, the Black Book. So this was them, my little cousins, the one that was in the house with me. That when I got to serve the search warrant.
Right.
This was their ritual of sacrifice.
Hey you and welcome. My name is Mike, and in this video we got going on here, well, it's one of those extremely messed up ones, so get ready. This is the story of Nico Jenkins, and boy howdy is this one you'll need to tighten your seatbelt for. So Nico Jenkins murdered 4 people in Omaha, Nebraska in 2013. And he didn't just do it for the crack. He did it on the command of the ancient Egyptian serpent god Apophis. Yeah, that guy. So, without further ado, let's get into what the F happened. Nico Jenkins was born in Omaha, Nebraska to parents David and Lori. As you can tell by taking one look at him, he didn't exactly have the greatest upbringing in the world. His family was actually well known to police as being hellraisers going back generations. It is a family that has deteriorated over time through escalating violent crime, drug and alcohol abuse, and child neglect. Authorities have removed at least 20 children from various related family homes. In fact, various family members have been involved in at least 150 other cases during the time of Nico Jenkins that ended in either acquittals, mistrials, or dropped charges, and have been convicted of a whopping 633 crimes since 1979. Going for gold. Nico actually first entered the justice system at age 7 after he brought a handgun to school. Thankfully, he didn't shoot anyone. At 11 years old, he was removed from the group home he was placed in after repeatedly beating the living shit out of everybody. I mean, he did grow up watching his parents fight all the time, so violence probably came pretty naturally to him. Yeah, it will, definitely. And at age 13, he continued his love of violence, but then it escalated to stabby. And in 2003, at age 17, he was finally sent to prison for 2 armed carjackings. While serving a prison sentence for the 2 carjackings, in 2009, Nico was convicted and faced up to 5 more years in prison for assaulting a prison guard during a furlough for his grandmother's funeral. In 2011, a county district judge sentenced Nico to 2 to 4 years in prison, a term that is cut to 1 to 2 years under state sentencing guidelines. However, the judge ordered the terms to be served concurrently with his already sentenced prison time, when it should have been tacked on at the end. So, Nico Jenkins was out of prison early in 2013. I don't know how many red flags need to show before you are clearly seen as a man who is a danger to society. But the system had them all. And that's when things get worse. In July 2013, 26-year-old Nico Jenkins would finally step out of prison after having served more than 10 years. It was also during that time in prison and in isolation he decided to tattoo and scar up his face, deciding that would be his look. He clearly based his look off a serial killer, probably Victor Zsasz from Batman, or maybe a snake. One thing's for sure, he's a pretty murderous looking murderer. Then, less than 2 weeks later.
The white F-150. We got 2 parties inside the vehicle. Appear to be shot in the head. And can you send a squad to our location?
Juan Uribe Peña and Jorge Caiga Ruiz were found shot to death in their car in Omaha, their pockets turned inside out. There was no reason for Nico Jenkins to kill them. He didn't know who they were. He just thought it would be a good idea. It wasn't. 8 days later, at around 7 a.m., the body of Curtis Bradford was found. He had been shot twice in the back. It was later revealed that Curtis and Nico had posed for a Facebook photo the day before. Out of all of Nico's victims, Curtis Bradford was the only one he knew. They had met in prison. Though judging by the amount of time he spent in prison and his family upbringing, I imagine all his Facebook friends are probably comic book villains. I mean, he looks like one. Nico's fourth and final victim was Andrea Kruger. Her body was discovered on August 21st at about 2:15 a.m. by a deputy sheriff responding to a shots fired call. Her body was found lying in the road with multiple bullet wounds. She had been returning home after a bartending shift. That evening, Andrea's SUV was found abandoned 12 miles away. Police later revealed they believed the SUV had been abandoned about 2.5 hours after being stolen, and that a feeble attempt had been made at setting the vehicle's interior on fire.
We have an active investigation. We want to maintain the integrity of that investigation.
Douglas County Chief Deputy Tom Wheeler says the public played a crucial role after Andrea Kruger's death. Tips led investigators from the murder scene near 168th and Fort to her SUV near 43rd and Charles.
And so Nico became one of those serial killers, or rather a spree killer, actually. Not that it's a competition. Nico Jenkins was arrested on August 30th after a woman, an ex-girlfriend of Nico, said that she saw one of Nico's cousins give Nico a gun, and he had also threatened to kill her family, so... a threat that he would/could follow through on, if he wasn't arrested, of course.
Officials won't say what they took from this Tudor Heights apartment Thursday night, but sources say evidence recovered may be connected to several unsolved homicides. This apartment near 108th and Maple is where police arrested 26-year-old Nico Jenkins Thursday for an outstanding felony warrant for terroristic threats. Sources say Jenkins' ex-girlfriend called police saying he threatened to kill her and her family. And the woman who reports Jenkins told her he was going to send demonic forces to her mother's house. But sources say that's just the tip of the iceberg.
And while the police had him in custody, more evidence against Nico began to mount up. And the police, they actually gathered surveillance footage of a woman close to Nico buying ammunition, distinctive ammunition that was used in the murders.
Nico Jenkins, age 26, arrested today on 4 counts of first-degree murder. The Kruger homicide and the murder 2 days earlier of 22-year-old Curtis Bradford. A week earlier, 2 more killings linked to Jenkins. Jorge Caiga Ruiz and Juan Uribe Peña shot to death in a pickup near Spring Lake Park. Investigators today say Nico Jenkins was an indiscriminate killer. Some victims he knew, others he did not.
And on September 3rd, 2013, Nico Jenkins confessed to the 4 murders.
squeeze? Can I? No. Oh, motherfucker. You motherfucker, you. You mother. You motherfucker. Die. Tres.
It's very subjective that we base our nutritional choices on how pretty or how cute an animal is. You know, it doesn't make sense. You know, and we're lucky now we're able to choose what we eat.
Right.
You know, like it wasn't like that 100 years ago. You know, the purpose of the food guide until like 40 years ago was to make sure you had enough calories. Now we're in an age of restriction, so we say like, I don't want horse, I prefer deer, or I prefer veal, or I had chicken yesterday, I can't have twice in a row. But like all this is a bit of fluff what we do in a way because we're so fortunate to have enough food to decide.
My friend Remy Warren was on a backpacking horseback elk hunt, and one of the horses fell down and broke its leg, and they had to make a decision. They were deep in the backcountry, and they had to shoot it, and it just wasn't going to get out of there. And after they shot it, he decided that really this animal's going to go to waste. So they took the back straps off, and they cooked it and ate it. And but he said it was a really weird moment where like this is an animal that was like everybody's petting it, and it was you're riding it, and it was a working animal, but it was an animal that you loved. And then all of a sudden it's down, and you have to kill it. And he's like, well, it's going to go to waste. He said it just felt wrong to let it go to waste, so they cut the back straps off of it.
You know, the reason I think we don't eat horse culturally is really based ultimately on the Battle of Wolfe between Montcalm on the plains of Quebec City. That was a decisive battle in North American history, whereas if the French had won that battle, everybody in North America ultimately would be speaking French. You know, they didn't win that battle. So British rule imposed. So in England, you didn't eat horse by royal decree. But the French ate horse. The Belgians eat horse. The Germans eat horse. You see? So
that's what it is.
Yeah, it's very old history.
You know, it was mining. It was
just verboten in an Anglophone world to eat horse.
And in all the mining countries, half my family's from Belgium, and it's traditional there because they bring the horse in the mine. The horse, you know, it's sad for a horse to live in the mine in the dark, but they wouldn't bring it out when he was old. You know, they would just eat the horse.
Most cultures eat Turkish eat horse. You know.
Well, it was a necessity. I mean,
Yeah.
you couldn't pick and choose back when all this was instituted.
We're very limited in the proteins that we eat, especially in North America. Quebec less so. You know, Quebec has a very open-minded dining public, very advanced dining public, very old dining public, and of course Latin, French dining public. The amount of proteins that are served in a Montreal restaurant are numerous compared to, let's say, even when I go to Manhattan. If me and you and Fred are in Manhattan tomorrow night, say, let's go have rabbit with mustard sauce, it's going to be a tough sell. We're going to really struggle to find rabbit mustard sauce. We're going to struggle even to find, let's go have a couple slices of liver tonight with onions. It's going to be very difficult to sell in New York City. Lamb neck, lamb
Kidneys.
liver. Deer is a hard, tall order,
Yeah.
Ultimately, Manhattan or America eats a limited scope of proteins, beef, chicken, so forth. Whereas, French culture, Quebec, we have all the proteins. I have young dining clientele that have no problem eating kidneys medium rare, liver, lamb liver, deer neck, deer heart tartare. It's not a thing. Like, it's not what other restaurant people are eating.
It's just part of the registry,
Little girls, like your daughters, are raised eating, the food that their dad hunts and the food that their parents buy. Some people of lesser means eat pork liver, they're raised on it. So when they see liver on the restaurant, cute little, 19-year-old girls that are about to go out to the club later will have a slice of liver. You won't see that in New York City.
What brings you here? Walk with us.
I met, like I said, I'm meeting a lot of people. I met a woman after a show recently. They're allowed at my shows, and see, they're here. And she came up to me and she was like, it's a very specific woman, all right? I do feel like I just did a 0.02 second impression. Everybody's like, I know exactly who you're talking about right now. So, because every city has. You know my favorite part of that woman is if you go, why are you laughing? She'll go, I'm not. Okay. So she comes up to me and she goes, funny show. And I go, thanks. Thanks, motherfucker, I appreciate it. So I go, thank you. And she goes, are you gonna go jerk off all over your hotel room now? And I was like, oh. I said, I'm probably just gonna pick a spot. You know, I'm not gonna do it. She goes, yeah, I get it. And I was like, God. And she goes, I'm super horny. And I go, okay. She goes, I'm horny the way guys are. And I go, no, you're not. And she goes, yeah. And I said, you're really not. And she goes, yeah, why do you say that? And I said, let me tell you a little story. When I was a freshman in college, I looked like this. I looked 47 years old. It was alarming to other students. They would see me walking through the dorms and they'd be like, are you a fucking administrator here or something? I'd be like, I'm a freshman, I'm 18. And they're like, you're a narc, that's what you are. This is my birth face, man. I'm 41 Jump Street. So, with this face came great responsibility. I bought alcohol for our entire dorm. I don't mean 3 or 4, everybody. It wasn't even a challenge. I looked so old that when I walked into liquor stores, they'd be like, hello, sir, how's the stock market today? Shit like that. I bought booze to everybody. Everybody got booze. I did the same thing with pornography. Let me tell you, before you jump at me like, why would you do that? You just watch it in your dorm room online. Well, the story takes place in 1997. And there was a lot of buffering back then. That is the truth. I don't know if you remember the late 90s or if you were even around, but like porn in the late 90s was like, ha ha, Who am I kidding? I use my right hand, so. Now, keep in mind, I'm not buying porn for a couple buddies. It is for an entire building of 18-year-old freshman dudes in college. You can't wrap your head around how massive and specific these orders were. I would go door to door and guys would hand me cash and their wish list. They'd be like, I want black cocks, asses, and feet. Don't fuck it up. I'm like, all right. Do you know what kind of a psychopath I looked like? Walking through a porn store with a grocery list, like. Mom said not to forget. So one day, I am buying outrageous amounts of porn. And the owner of the store comes up to me. He goes, you should go to this other store. And I'm like, that is a weird thing to tell your best customer, man. So I go, why? He just goes, I just think you'll like it. And so I go, okay. I go. He sends me to, I don't know if you've ever been to a cement block building with no sign or address. The kind of building that's like, I don't know, you fucking guess what's in here. Like that? Well, I walk in and I see a man wearing overalls and no t-shirt, which I think we all know is the international uniform for the last guy you'll ever see. Now, this guy is behind the counter. He looks up and sees me, and the first words out of his mouth are, "Piss fetish?" And I go, "What? No." He goes, "Oh, I got a full bladder. Don't want to waste it." And I go, "What the fuck?" I said, "Is that what you do around here?" And he goes, "Among other things." I said, "Well, then show me around. Like, let me see what else you have." You know? I don't want to be closed-minded. So we go through the store. He shows me movies and toys. He goes, "We got a booth. You can put in a quarter." And I go, "Yeah, I got it." He goes, "But this here's our VIP. And you'll notice there's a hole in the wall. And if you're standing in there, someone might stick their finger through that hole. And they'll go just like this. And if you want to, you stick your prick in that hole and someone will suck it on the other side." And my dumbass goes, "Is it a guy or a girl?" He goes, "You see any other cars in that parking lot, Junior?" So then I felt a pool of diarrhea forming inside of me and fear shooting down my spine, as I was certain I was gonna get kidnapped and raped by Mr. Fuck Dynasty. So I said, "I'll just take my movies, thanks." So lady, when you say you're horny the way guys are, I ask you, are you willing to go into an unmarked building and wait behind a wall for a stranger to stick his dick through a hole in that wall and then you polish it off for the love of the game? Because that's what savages men are. And she goes, "Yeah, I'm not that horny." And I go, "I know." See, I just feel a responsibility to remind women of what pigs men are. If you're a woman and you're here with a man right now, you should know he is 2 drinks away from walking into that booth. And honestly, I'm no better. If he had answered my question differently, if I had been like, "Hey, is that a guy or a girl?" And he went, "I don't know." I'd be like, "Well, I don't fucking know either." So.
The Joe Rogan Experience.
Did you always have that style?
No, I didn't.
When did you develop that?
Once we started working on our Cypress Hill demos, Muggs came to me and said, "Hey, man, you got to do something. You got to do something different. Otherwise, you're going to write for Sen." Because Sen had a good voice. His shit was locked in. And my voice, I was rapping in a voice similar to the one I'm talking. And although the rhymes were good, it didn't cut through on the style, like on the beats. It just sounded like, some regular shit. So, I didn't want to be someone's writer. I wanted to write for myself. So, there was a guy that we used to listen to coming up. His name was Ram LZ. He was on this record called Wild Style, and he was in the movie. He was this rapper who was very obscure, but he was an artist too, you know, like a graffiti artist, but then also an artist, you know, but he was also a rapper. And what he would do is he'd rap in a regular style, like his talking voice. This is the brother they call the Ram L. He had a deep voice like that. And then he would flip right in the middle. Take it uptown to Cypress Hill with the shotgun, blah, 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 like that. And, you know, we were always freaking out on that he had two styles. So I tried throwing my voice in that sort of similar style, and it ended up sticking. I didn't think anybody was going to like it. I thought they were going to be like, get the fuck out of here with that. But they ended up liking it. And I think the first song that came about in that style was the song Real Estate off our first album. It's you know, that was where I tried it the first time. They liked it. So then Kill a Man came next, and I tried that song in that style, and then Hand on the Pump, and it just became a flow after that. And I really did not feel it at first. I was like, fuck, I can't believe they got me rapping in this voice, right? And it took a minute to get used to that, you know, like doing it live. Because, you know, I had a tendency, we as rappers, you know, that don't know, because there's no school for this unless you have somebody who's done it and they teach you, okay, this is what the get down is. And we didn't have that really. It was all hands-on learning. You know, for the first few years, man, I was trying to do the voice, and I'd end up, you know, getting overhyped because the crowd is hype, and I'd start yelling the verses instead of like rapping them like on the record. I'd throw my voice out. My voice would get scratchy. I'd be sounding like Busta Rhymes and shit, you know what I mean? And it took me 5 years to actually harness how to actually do the shows with this voice. And I had to go to this opera singer coach.
Really?
Her name was something Elizabeth Sabine or something like that. She trained a lot of folks, but her shit was like to teach you the operatic way of singing, which is from the diaphragm, tighten the stomach, take little breaths, but those little breaths make your lungs expand, you know, a lot, and it's less projection from your throat and more from the bottom. And she taught me that technique, and I never went hoarse again after that. I would, you know, people often compliment me on, you know, sounding so close to how the records are. There's once in a while where I might get excited and start saying it louder than it might be, but I'm always sort of right there. And I got to give all props to her, because if she hadn't showed me that technique, I'd probably still be yelling and screaming my shit out, fucking up my voice, you know?
Yeah, that brings up an interesting point. Is this her?
She's teaching somebody how to sing heavy metal right here.
Yeah.
No way. Let me hear some. Oh, we can't play this on YouTube. We'll get kicked off YouTube.
And she was an opera singer at one time.
Wow.
But she went on to teach people the technique.
No kidding, man. That is wild.
See, because if you try to keep your breath and sustain a long note like that from your chest, you won't sustain that note long enough. But if you tighten up,
doing it from your diaphragm?
Yeah, if you tighten up, almost, it's almost like if you're gonna take a shit.
Instead of from the throat. That makes sense.
Yeah, you know, like it allows you. It allows your lungs to expand while you're breathing through from your diaphragm. So that's what she taught a lot of singers. And it's another method is to cheat the word, like pronounce it. You know, like you're kind of like it's like what these mumble rappers do when they pronounce a word and they kind of mumble it and they sort of cheat it. You know what the word is, but they didn't pronounce it all the way.
Right.
So in other words, if you were gonna sing the line "come with me," so it sounds a little bit cleaner. You'd say "gum with me," but in the way you would say it is more with a G, but it's so tucked in that you hear "come with me," and it's just a cheating way of saying it to get the line a little bit cleaner and fucking you know, in the breath. And she taught me all that shit, and it worked for rap. I didn't know if it would. Because I mean, she primarily taught singers. I was probably the first rapper that she taught this technique to, and it stuck, man.
How'd you find her?
One of my friends had heard of her, you know, because I mean, in the industry, you meet, you know, become friends with other, your peers and stuff like that. And I knew a couple singers, and they were, noting my problem is to, screaming my verses and coming back with the raspy voice. So they were like, here, why don't you try this person right here? This person taught or gave this technique to so-and-so, and it was another singer I can't remember, but I thought, well, what have I got to lose? I mean, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, but maybe I learned something from it that I could use somewhere else, right? And she taught me the warm-up. She taught me, the certain words that you can cheat to for certain breath control purposes, because the way you pronounce certain things, sort of add to that, and just the tightening of the diaphragm, man. Like if I hadn't learned that, it would have took me a lot longer to do the shows the way that I can do them now.
So do you warm up before shows?
I don't necessarily need to. Like from the first song on, my voice gets in. Like the first few bars, it warms up right then and there. And it's not really like singing where I got to sustain notes and stuff like that, so I don't have to do those same kind of warm-ups. If I was going to sing some shit, yes, I would definitely have to get my, get the pitch right and the throat warmed up to do those different, melodies or whatever the hell. But fortunately, I don't sing.
That's the one that they took.
Yes.
But it's the same name.
I think it's called chloroquine.
Hey you, and welcome. My name is Mike, and in this old video, we're heading on down to Texas. Now, Texas has a reputation for a lot of things, one of them being cowboys. Yeehaw, am I right? And when I think of cowboys, one story that keeps coming up again and again is a story of revenge. Someone wronged and seeking payback. Well, in this story, we don't have cowboys. Instead of horses, we have a Segway. But what we do have is a story of revenge, and a justice of the peace gone rogue in the town of Kaufman, Texas. Let's giddy up. Kaufman is a small place in northeast Texas, about 30 miles-ish from Dallas. Population of about 7,500 people. It's a rural enough place, blink and you'll miss it kind of deal. It's the seat of Kaufman County, which has over 100,000 people in it. And in 2013, like something out of a thriller, right? Prosecutors started dying. Mark Hasse was a very experienced prosecutor, having spent years going after organized gangs in the Dallas District Attorney's Office. Bit of a Harvey Dent style, he moved to Kaufman to essentially get out of the crowded city life. He started working at the Kaufman County District Attorney's Office as Assistant District Attorney, working under newly elected District Attorney Mike McClelland. And he seemed to be a great prosecutor and generally well liked by everyone in the office. Tips were coming in, and he was a very experienced prosecutor, having spent years going after organized gangs in the Dallas. And you'll miss it kind of deal. It's the seat of Kaufman County, which has to be a great prosecutor and generally well liked by everyone in the office. Mark Hasse got along great with his boss, Mike McClelland. Everything was hunky-dory. Until it wasn't. See, then the 31st of January 2013 came around.
Kaufman County 911. Yes, sir, we've got a gentleman on Grove Street and Madison that just got shot. Help me! Oh my God, it's Mark Hasse, the Assistant District Attorney.
Just before 9 a.m., gunshots rang out from near the courthouse in Kaufman. 5 shots, pause, 3 shots. Authorities arrived quickly enough on the scene, and lying on the pavement was 57-year-old Mark Hasse. No one knew why Mark had been gunned down in broad daylight while on his way to work, on his way to the office. You know, there was no weapon found, there was no casings found even. It was seen to have been, the brazen work of, well, a killer. The balls on them doing it at rush hour, although then again I said Kaufman, so, probably not much happening.
Kaufman County Assistant District Attorney Mark Hasse was shot multiple times in the parking lot a block from the courthouse. Police are looking for 1 or possibly 2 suspects witnesses say were dressed in black. Police say there was a very short confrontation between gunman and Hasse just before the attack. County Judge Bruce Wood.
Just an outstanding person individually, but he was also just a very well-known and very well-respected prosecutor for the district attorney's office. This is just a horrible situation, a horrible tragedy.
The 57-year-old Hasse had been a prosecutor in the county DA's office for 3 years. He was earlier a prosecutor in Dallas, where he worked on mob cases. Investigators do not have a motive, but they described the shooting as a targeted attack.
People of the town, though, were on edge, especially, people from the district attorney's office. High profile enough, assistant district attorney gunned down in broad daylight. The district attorney, Mike McClelland, actually made it easier for everybody to get a concealed handgun license. People were just worried about what the shit had happened. Witnesses had seen the shooting and said a man, covered up, couldn't make out his face, had escaped in the passenger seat of a silver 4-door getaway car. So it seems like there was 2 people involved in the death of Mark Hasse. And another thing was that a different witness who didn't see it but was in a garage nearby heard what happened shortly before the shots rang out. They said they heard Mark talking with this person, and Mark apparently was saying, "No, I'm sorry," and then gunshots. District Attorney Mike McClelland and Mark's good friend, he wasn't having any of it.
I hope that the people that did this are watching, because we're very confident that we're going to find you, we're going to pull you out of whatever hole you're in, and we're going to bring you back and let the people of Kaufman County prosecute you to the fullest extent of the law. Kaufman County, the state of Texas, and especially my office, has suffered a devastating loss today.
What's the part about this that hurts the most?
The fact that I can't reach out and grab somebody and do something about it right now, because I want them really bad.
Other law enforcement officials, Texas Rangers, ATF, FBI, descended on Kaufman. They weren't going to let, someone murder one of their own and get away with it. This became a major case. So it didn't take long, to put 2 and 2 together and figure out why a prosecutor may be, on someone's bad list. Authorities started going through everyone he had prosecuted in Kaufman in the 3 years he had been a felony prosecutor there. However, though there were numerous cases, a metric shit ton, nothing seemed to fit. No violent crimes. Nothing that would warrant murder or was related to gangs. But back in Dallas, 30 miles away, back in the day he had put away murderers, violent offenders, and some had been released by 2013. But a week into the investigation, promising leads were non-existent. 4 weeks later, a tip came in. A person left an anonymous tip on their website saying that they were in a bar in Kaufman and had heard 2 lads yapping away about the death of Mark Hasse, and they seemed to be pretty knowledgeable about it, hint hint. However, there wasn't enough for the police to follow up on it because, the entire system was anonymous. They couldn't contact the tipster, and he more or less said, yeah, there's 2 people talking about it, maybe you should know about it. And it's like, oh wow, great, thanks. That's helpful. So, looking through some of the cases Mark had prosecuted, and specifically the way he had been killed, like execution style, Gangs became like their number one lead, or number one thing they were investigating. Specifically Mexican cartels, Dios mío, or even fucking Nazis, the Aryan Brotherhood.
I hate these guys.
See, 3 months before, a shitload of them had been arrested, and they even had made a threat that they wanted to, quote, get even. The Kaufman County District Attorney's Office had played a role in that investigation.
Right now, more breaking news in the shocking overnight murder of the head of Colorado's prison system. Tom Clements was gunned down as he answered the front door of his Monument home last night.
7 weeks after Mark's death, the head of the Colorado Department of Corrections was murdered on his front door by a member of the Aryan Brotherhood, Evan Ebel. So everyone was becoming nervous that they were next, especially as this Evan Ebel was still on the run. And when he was pulled over in Texas, he shot the shit out of a sheriff's deputy. The deputy, by the way, survived. Can't say the same for Evan after a police chase and a shootout.
1020. All units, Montague's advising that the subject is going to be armed and there were shots fired. Y'all at that? Update on location. Roadside Park, County, we're coming to the Roadside Park. See you, Bob. 723, do you copy that west traffic? Fleet, major accident.
We have not had that discussion as of yet, no.
So, things were looking bad, but as the weeks went on, fewer and fewer tips were coming in, and the investigators working on the Mark Hasse case, the number of them just started to dwindle as things started to peter out. And then it happened again. On March 30th, 2013, friends and family were supposed to pop over to the McLelands for an Easter dinner. And when Mike and his wife Cynthia weren't answering any texts or calls that morning, a friend came over to check if they were okay and everything was ready for the dinner. Inside, shell casings were found right at the front door. Cynthia was found lying in the living room, and District Attorney Mike McLeland was found also. Both had been gunned down. Mike was found with shell cases right by him. Again, like his friend and assistant Mark Hasse, execution style. So, obviously connected. Someone was going after the Kaufman District Attorney's office, starting with Assistant District Attorney Mark Hasse, and then going after head honcho himself, District Attorney Mike McLeland. But things were really dark. His wife also, who, whatever they were after, it was obviously somewhat a grudge against the system. They were going after family members now. The hunt for the killer had started to die down, but now it just ramped up again with even more vigor as things got even darker. But, everybody was questioning, who's next?
And we begin on this Saturday night with breaking news. Kaufman County District Attorney Mike McLeland and his wife have been found shot to death inside their home. And sources are telling News 8 tonight this does not appear to be a murder-suicide. The stunning news comes just 2 months after the murder of Kaufman County Assistant District Attorney Mark Hasse. No one was ever arrested in that case.
So, how did someone gain access to the McLeland home? There was no sign of forced entry, front door unlocked, and Mike had guns by the front door, ones he obviously never got a chance to use. The cases were from an AR-15, so a big old gun. Home security showed that this intruder had entered the home shortly before 7 a.m., left 2 minutes later, and in that short span of time, 20 shots were fired. About a day later, on that same anonymous tip line I mentioned earlier, a message came in saying,
"Do we have your full attention now?"
The authorities replied with, "Yeah, you have our attention now." No shit. This anonymous person responded with the exact ammunition Mark Hasse had been killed with, something that wasn't publicly available. They then said,
"Your act of good faith will result in no other attacks this week."
They then said they wanted one of the judges in Kaufman to step down by the end of the week. Or else.
"We are not unreasonable, but we will not be stopped."
So, obviously someone local ruling out cartels or Nazis, and so everyone in law enforcement basically slept with a gun under their pillow. And a reward for $200,000 for information was offered. Scouring CCTV near the McClelland home, they got something. A white four-door car driving the morning Mike and Cynthia were shot dead, similar to the car a witness had seen the morning Mark was killed.
My heart goes out to all the families that have been affected by this tragedy, and especially to the people that work at the courthouse. I worked there for several years while I was going to law school, and so I know that it's a tight-knit family and that this is devastating to them.
What's it make you feel like knowing that you've been somehow wrapped up in this?
It actually makes me feel that the police are doing the thorough job they need to.
Doing the rounds for local reporters at this time was a man named Eric Williams. On his little Segway, God, I hate those things.
Cooperated with law enforcement. I certainly wish them the best in bringing justice for this just incredibly egregious act.
However, he hadn't been properly interviewed by the investigators at this stage because he was all lawyered up. See, over a year before all of this started happening back in 2011, Eric Williams had been prosecuted by both Mark Hasse and Mike McClelland. He had been prosecuted by both of them, both the victims, for theft. And Eric Williams wasn't just some, Joe Soap off the street. Eric Williams, a Mensa member, wow, big brain time, was a lawyer and an elected justice of the peace in Kaufman. Until 6 months after he was elected, he was charged with stealing 3 computer monitors. Computer monitors. Not money, weapons, something really valuable. Computer monitors. He was arrested.
I don't think that you actually believe, you're an educated person, I see your class ring on your finger, that you can just walk into an ID department and say, "I need a monitor, I'm taking that one."
There's places that do that.
Places being here in Kaufman County, or?
Well, there's businesses that, yeah.
And Mark and Mike prosecuted him for this, a felony, which seemed to drive Eric nuts. See, Eric had also supported Mike McClelland's opponent in the election for district attorney. So some thought the prosecution of Eric, something that was not too serious to be fair, was a shit show. He was offered a deal, plead guilty to a misdemeanor and avoid jail. He refused as he didn't want a misdemeanor on his record. Eric ended up not going to jail, but he lost his licenses, his ability to be elected, everything. Mark Hasse said in the closing arguments of this trial, again a trial for stealing 3 monitors, said that guy over there sitting at the end of the table, Eric Williams, is an elected official, but is nothing more than a thief and a burglar. Mike McClelland, by the way, during the trial, called Eric Williams his Texas National Guard base where he was stationed, to inform them that Eric Williams, he's a criminal now. Just thought you guys should know that. So, you can see how Eric might not be a big fan of Mark and Mike. So when Eric Williams' lawyers stopped representing him, Texas Rangers went by to, pay him a little visit.
I've been in your house. I know you got lots of guns.
Did.
Okay. What
How do you think I've been living?
Selling guns?
Yeah, for 2 years.
You don't have any more? You got rid of
I
all
have
of them?
one gun I'm trying to sell, and it's just hard as hell to sell.
And they had a little look around his place and found gun parts, ones that matched the weapons used in both murder scenes. He'd also been doing a good bit of Googling of both Mark and Mike before the killings, something he would lie about. He was like, oh, don't know what you're talking about. While the Texas Rangers were like, your internet tracks that, right? You should probably know that. Getting a warrant, they also found out he owned the car. He owned it under a false name. The car seen by witnesses near Mark Hasse and by CCTV near the McClelland home. They also found on his computer that Eric just so happened to be Googling the names of the attorneys currently involved in the murder investigations. So he was adding more names to his list. They also found this, handwritten in his home. That is the user ID from the anonymous tip system, the one that claimed responsibility for the attacks, and also the earlier tip when someone said they overheard people talking about the Mark Hasse death in a bar. Eric Williams was arrested for making a terrorist threat, not for murder. Yet. Not enough evidence, but the next day, a friend called the authorities investigating, telling them that they had rented a storage unit to Eric. He's been arrested. Maybe you should pop by it. Have a goo. In it, they found the car that they had been looking for. And not only that. Police uniforms, vests, badges, a shitload of ammo, and a shitload of guns. They also found, in jars, homemade napalm. Wow. They also had CCTV footage of him going into the storage unit the morning of the McClelland deaths, right before he went to their house, and then returning right after. However, the lab would reveal that none of the weapons found in the storage unit were the murder weapons, but they had enough to charge Eric Williams with 3 counts of capital murder. The motive was simply revenge. In December 2013, Eric Williams went on trial, first off for the murder of Cynthia. The prosecutors wanted to be sure they had their ducks in a row, hence why he was tried separately for each. The defense went with, well, they never found a murder weapon, so what you on about? Come on.
There is no known murder weapon in this case. There's no one who can place Eric Williams in that scene at the McClelland home. No one.
After 90 minutes, the jury found him guilty.
We, the jury, unanimously find the defendant, Eric Lyle Williams, guilty of capital murder as charged in the indictment.
You see, what happened to be actually quite a strange series of events was that shortly after Mark Hasse's death, District Attorney Mike McClelland actually suspected Eric Williams of being responsible for it, and he didn't keep that suspicion to himself. He would mention it to everybody, but, they didn't have enough to go on. Shortly after Mark Hasse was killed, investigators did go to his house, and his arm was in a sling from an injury that apparently just didn't exist. He was like, yeah, of course I'm not responsible for killing somebody. My arm's fucked. They tested his hands for gunshot residue, no dice. But Mike McClelland had his suspicions about him right until the moment he showed up on his own door. Showing up wearing, police uniform, SWAT uniform, getting them to open the door to him, pretending to be a cop, and then as soon as Cynthia or Mike opened the door, well, remember a witness had seen the perpetrator of the Mark Hasse death escape in the passenger seat of a car that drove away? So they had the car, they had Eric. But who would the driver be? Well, it would happen to be, star witness for the prosecution, Eric's wife, Kim. They had been married for 15 years. She had been brought in shortly after Eric's arrest, and after a brief resistance, told the investigators